announcements. I'm saying this over for my virtual people. And follow the steps to go and log into and create a college. You guys had to create a College Board account, correct? Okay, so when you create a College Board account, make sure that you save your whatever you use for your username and your email. And I would highly recommend that you do not use your school email. Did you guys use your school email? Does it tell you not to? Yes. So don't use your school email, because what happens is after you graduate, that email goes away and you'll still be attached to the College Board because you'll want to take other tests and then you won't have access to. So use your personal email, and if you don't have one, set up your own Gmail account and make sure that you save your username and password because you will use it a lot. You guys are taking PSAT this year. So you'll already be signed in to Google, to College Board, so you won't have that aggravation and that worry. When you take the SAT, and then all your other AP classes will all be in that one spot. So make sure that you do that and follow the steps. And if it asks for your student ID, that's your school lunch code. That's your lunch number, whatever that is. It what?
It was optional.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, but it is your student lunch number. All right. Friday, tomorrow, we'll have our second quiz, which is the kind of the back part. So it won't have anything about Machiavelli or the Renaissance or painters. It'll just be this back part that we're talking about, these new monarchs and Renaissance. And then on Tuesday, we'll have another big quiz with all the questions in it. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
What if I'm not here? How do I...
For that quiz?
Yeah.
You're not going to be here on Friday?
I have a dentist appointment.
Okay, so I will send you the code, the secret passcode, and then you can take it that way. Are you going to be gone the whole day, or?
I think for just part of the day.
Okay, so send me an email and I'll send you the code, and then you can take it. All right. So we didn't get past that. Oh, we're getting ready to do France. Okay. So we are getting ready to look at specifically those three countries, France, England, and Spain. And we're going to kind of begin the build-up of these new monarchs. And again, when we talk about new monarchs, they're in the 1500s. They're trying to build these strong nation states working towards being absolutist. Now, they're not going to get there. They're going to work towards that, but they're not going to be in that absolutist. So on page 2, we have Louis the 11th, who is the Spider King. And I don't know that I've ever seen a question about Louis the 11th ever on any AP exam, but it is important to note that he will be the rise of the Valois line of monarchs. So in France, we have two. We have the Valois, and then eventually we're going to have the Bourbons that will lead us into the French Revolution. What's important, besides his name, is the steps that he takes to create this new, strong nation state that will be France. And the first thing is an army. And that army, again, is loyal to the king and loyal to France. Not a lord, it's not a mercenary. And when we talk about this, let's also write out to the side where it says created a large royal army, write as a standing army. So we have to make sure we understand a standing army is like what the United States of America has currently. Our military is called a standing military. It means that regardless of what's happening, whether it's peacetime or wartime, we have an army that goes and gets up every day, and that's what they do. So they train well, they get salaries, they are at the disposal of the leader. Yes?
What did you say Louis was the rise of?
New monarchs. So that standing army is essentially important, that it is at the beck and call of the king. On the flip side of that, I just listed a whole lot of things. They get a salary, they get uniforms, they have barracks, they need horses, they need weapons. And where are they going to get all that money? Right? We're going to have to tax things, right, Ben? In order to have a standing army, we need a lot of taxes. A gigantic chunk of the budget of the United States of America goes to the Department of Defense to cover everything. And if we start and stop and think about all the things that an army needs, it is extensive and it's all covered by tax dollars. In modern time, in the 21st century, lots of things that most people don't even think about in the Department of Defense budget goes for. I was educated at Department of Defense schools. My teachers were paid for by the Department of Defense. Every time my family moved, it was paid for by the Department of Defense. We didn't pay to move. We had a car that got shipped across the Atlantic Ocean twice when we went to, when my dad was stationed in West Germany. I flew across the ocean twice for my dad. None of that we paid for. We lived on base on a house that we didn't pay rent for. We didn't pay a light bill or a utility bill. So those are big expenses that are incurred by a standing army. And that is why, until we get to this time period, no nation really could afford to have one. But like Ben told us, we're going to start to raise taxes. And in generating these taxes, we're going to build this army that will require a lot of money. Now, we still expect these armies, now when I say food and all that, we still expect these armies to fend for themselves. Traditionally, we're only going to give them like 3 days worth of food. So when they are moving, they're going to have to be scavengers, which is why, for the most part, armies will be so hated because they are going to take food from people. They're going to kill their chickens. They're going to take their eggs. They're going to take their cows, and they will be scavengers for almost until we get to the 20th century before we start to think about armies looking like regular armies. So they're not very well liked, and especially the French army, which is going to be one of the most powerful. Yes, ma'am.
When they taxed you, did they tax you in like money or things that you have?
Yes. So one of the things to think about is, how do poor people get money, right? How do poor people have money? For the most part, it is coins that we're getting. The church and noble people, as part of, and remember France is a Catholic, part of being a Catholic is doing good works. So that word alms, A-L-M-S, alms, giving to the poor, that's how a lot of poor people got money. It was just given to them, and it absolved some of the sins that some of these nobles confessed to. Kings, queens gave out money all the time. They give out money, handing alms out to poor people. So that's one of the ways. Also, they worked. They had, they would do menial jobs and they got paid. The taxes that poor people would pay would be taxes on things they immediately use, called usage taxes, like salt. To get salt, I'd have to pay a tax. To church, I'd have to pay a tithe. So those are paid in money. Ben?
Currently, I believe currently, if you're in the military, you don't have to pay taxes as long as
No.
you're active, right? Well, sort of
Not true. No.
taxes.
No, everybody pays taxes.
But would they do it like the French army, right?
Yeah, everybody paid taxes. No, who was ever told you that mistakenly that people in the military don't pay taxes? That's not correct. They pay taxes. They pay taxes. The only thing that might think that that's strange is that when you're active duty military, you get to declare a home resident. So you can choose that. Like a whole lot of people will choose, even though they never live there, they'll choose Florida or Texas because they don't have a state income tax. But there's nobody that doesn't pay federal income tax. The President of the United States pays federal income tax. Everybody pays it. And the only thing that'll get you thrown in jail faster than anything is not paying your income tax. That's why Capone went to jail, not because Al Capone killed people. He went to jail because he didn't pay his taxes. So, yes.
If you have to pay money to church, why not just not go?
Doesn't matter. You still are required. You're a parishioner. You are part of a parish, and in that you have responsibilities. You can't think of it like church in the 20th or 21st century. It's not that kind of a thing. And Maddie, you can't think about religion in the ways that we think that it's optional. It's not optional. And these people don't want it to be optional. They're very devoutly religious, even though there'll be lots of things that we don't think of as religion, especially when we get to all of our kings and queens. They believe they're divinely touched by God. They are, and even though they're going to do all these things that are not, like have mistresses and all these things, and it's hard to wrap our head around, but these people are devoutly religious. Just like they're very superstitious, and they bet and they gamble. For many people, that, like for my granny, I couldn't even have Old Maid cards. That's the only time my papa ever got really mad at me, was we mistakenly had Old Maid cards in our suitcase, and he threw them out in the yard like they were, like been touched by the devil kind of thing. But they are, and their life centers around their parish and their parish priests and their church. So, number one, it's not optional. And number two, for the most part, most people don't think that it's optional. And most people don't feel that it's optional. And again, when we get to the Reformation and we get to this Protestantism and we get to the wars of religion and we fight for like 30 years about war and religion, at the end, all of these people go back to Catholicism. Almost all of Europe is Catholic except for England and the northern parts of Germany and Finland and those places. Every place else is Catholic. Every place. Italy, Austria, Spain, France, southern Germany, almost all. The only places that Protestant holds on is the places that it started in. So, and Poland. If you're from Poland, you're either Catholic or Jewish. I mean, that's the two things you have a choice of. So, I know it's hard because none of these people sound very religious, but the people in our book are not the normal average everyday people. And tithing was a responsibility. It's what part of, again, the good works of how do I get to heaven as a Catholic? Faith and good works. One of the biggest, most giantest charity in North America is Catholic Charities, because every Catholic participates in that because it's part of who they are and how they attain their salvation. Good works. It's necessary. Where Martin Luther's going to say it's advisable, but for Catholics it's necessary. So back to answering Molly's question, that's how they got money, is they gave it out. Rich people gave it out. And so poor people huddled around certain places. Just like when we talk about the king being divine, like divinely anointed, because the kings are anointed in their coronation ceremonies by the archbishop. There is a belief that everyone believes that the touch of a monarch can heal. And so there will be, you with your little skeptical face, there will be times that's a part of what a monarch does, is to move amongst the poor and touch them and heal them, because they are divinely anointed by God. Now, we talk about that in a skeptical sense, so then your face can get all fixed, because we're like, yeah, that's a really perfect thing to say, you're divinely appointed by God, because then no one can go against you, because if they go against you, they go against your God. But for the most part, no one disbelieves that. No one disbelieves that. You would not. You probably would not. But here's the other part. You would have had, obviously, your innate intelligence, but no way to express it, my friend, right? Because you wouldn't have that ability to read and write and to speak your mind. Or if you did, you'd probably be dead. But right? You, for all purposes, would have been born with your innate intelligence, your smartness, but you would not have been taught on how that, because right, there had to have been incredibly intelligent women in the time period of which we study that had no way to channel their intelligence, because they weren't educationally taught anything. So anyway, so that is Louis. We get Francois the First. This is the dude you need to know. This is Francois the First. Those of you that watch that goofy show, Rain, Does anybody watch that goofy show, Rain? Okay, this is him. Mrs. Greggs loves this show. And so when we went to France, I think now we're almost 2 years away. We went to Francois, the first castle where he put his mistress, Diane, because he didn't like his wife. And I had to remind Mrs. Greggs while we're walking through that, and she's just so enamored. Well, first of all, Diana was his dad's mistress too. And they both started sleeping together when she was about 30 and he was about 12. So there we go. There's that. She's like, stop it. I'm like, just got to be truthful with all this stuff. That's the castle where I got followed by the security guard too. All through the whole dang castle, all the way out the castle and out the gate. They followed me, making eye contact with me. Like he did not want me to just think, perhaps, is this guy following me? No, I'm following you. Following you. Because I was touching things. I didn't touch anything I was not allowed to touch. I did not touch the tapestries, but I was just touching things like doorknobs, doors, walls, corners that I knew perchance Francois had touched. Or Diane Poitier had touched, even though I don't like Diane, but that's me in those old places, touching things. And so, yeah. So I'm like, I think that guy's following me. They're like, no. And then Ryan's like, oh, he's making eye contact with you, Mrs. Norris. He's following you. I'm like, yeah, I think so. All right. So at the bottom of that page, the King of France now has the power to appoint bishops. And I think they still do. That is a very powerful political, not religious, political control that France has over the church, that they can appoint their own bishops. They get to pick. So what that means is that for the most part, the Bishop of France will be French. Not all countries get their own countryman as their bishop. Represented a major blow to papal influence in France. And again, remember that's one of the goals of these new monarchs is to reduce the power of the church. And on the bottom of page 2, Tal, that is a tax. That's a head tax on land and property.
Head tax,
So,
does that mean?
Tal is a tax.
Is it like this head tax?
Head tax means we count. 1, 2, 3, 4. In your family, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a head tax. How many people? On the top of page 3, now we're in England. You don't need to know about the War of the Roses. That's the York and Lancaster War of the Roses kind of thing. But what you need to know that comes out of that are the Tudors. They come out of that, and our first Tudor king is Henry VII. And again, Henry is working to reduce the influence of the nobility. The nobility will be what caused the War of the Roses. So he does this with this thing called the Star Chamber. You do need to know that. It's not what you think. It's nothing to do with Star Wars. It's not a good thing.
Not even that, it's just the
Star Chamber? Yeah, it is. It's secret trials. A Star Chamber is a secret trial. So we got to talk about what that means. That means a noble can be tried without a jury, with no witnesses, and again, they're tortured. Which, again, when you're tortured, you usually will. It's not a trial, right? It's done in secret. Oftentimes, you don't know what you're being tried for. There's no witnesses. You have no. It is a Star Chamber, and please understand how powerful that would be if you were a monarch. If I'm a monarch and I feel like someone is threatening my reign, if someone's threatening my control over England, I just bring them in the Star Chamber. And it is powerful, and it's going to last for quite some time. Because if you're king, do you want to get rid of the Star Chamber? You do not want to get rid of the Star Chamber. And again, this is not U.S. history, but I want you to remember these things when we get to APUSH. And we're talking about things like why it was so important to have those amendments to the Constitution, like trial by jury of your peers, a right to a speedy trial, right? Because these people endured this type of a justice system. Nobody. And in essence, on almost every court system in Europe, you have to prove your innocence, which is really, really harder to prove than the fact that you're not guilty, and that also you don't have the same rights. So this will be an incredible part of the change that the Europeans will be looking for when they move into the colonies. Yes.
So with the nobility, could they use that as like a threat? If someone was like
No.
challenging them, they couldn't go. You want the star?
No. The only person that had control of the Star Chamber is the king. The king is the only person that has control of that Star Chamber. The king and the king's privy council. So if you were a member of the king's privy council, you could do that, but not just a regular noble.
So the Star Chamber, were they just tortured?
Yeah.
Or, like,
So what does that torture look like? Torture, okay, so first of all, the torturer, because of the church, could not draw blood. So you couldn't draw blood. So that means burning, that means scalding, that means fire, right? So it means stretching, it means breaking. So that, the scalding, burning, and then breaking of joints. That's what you could do. Yes.
I feel like that's like it works, but it could.
It works. Look,
It does seem inefficient.
It does. Like,
Yeah.
if you're like, hey, let's reduce power, and I think
it is exactly. So
you just kill him and be like, whoops. Now
no,
his
you
heir
can,
is,
no.
like,
Here's why.
terrified.
Remember the church. You can't just kill. Now, if you die in the midst of torture, that's okay. Let's take 2 steps back. The only way that you could be convicted of an offense is if you admitted to that. You have to confess. So the torturing is to get you to confess of what you're charged. That's the whole purpose of torture.
But they won't tell you what you're charged.
Well, you eventually, I mean, when you're in the Star Chamber, you will. But like when I say you're going to the Star Chamber, you don't know why. Once you get in, you know why, but you're locked in and you can't get out. And I get what you're saying, Maggie. If what you're trying to do is consolidate power in the monarchy, that is perfect. It's perfect. That's why it works. That's why from Henry VII until we get to in the reign of the Tudors, it's just going to continue to increase the power.
I feel like you could just like make it be an accident and shove him down the stairs.
God knows.
No, because you need to
God,
get
no.
you need to get the confession. So let's make sure we understand what this torture looks like. This isn't like just you and a dude. In the torturing part, there is the torturer. Then there is a member of the church. There is a priest available.
Like you don't even have to. Like you could
If they
just
can
go
confess
to
it,
their
I was
house and just like
So
shove him
people,
down the
like-
stairs.
No, but you need them to confess.
Okay,
So
once they
when
confess,
people
am I allowed to kill
confess-
them?
By what?
Not me, but like
What?
once-
So would people confess even if like they didn't do it?
Even though they didn't do it.
Stop, like, torturing them?
Yes.
Is it like in The Princess Bride whenever Wesley's getting tortured and all?
I bet it's exactly like the Princess Bride.
What
A
if
little
they're,
bit.
like officially charged
He's
and it's
only
just
both
like a.
There's no official charge.
But like it's like you just think that they might have something against you, so why don't you just like send someone over to like either
Well,
side and shove them
Let
down
me
the
say
stairs?
this. Let me say this for you, Maggie. England's not going to do that, but France will. The King of France has at his disposal any time death warrants that he can issue. Go kill Maggie. Choo choo. He has that authority.
Why didn't they just do that?
They do. They do. They do.
So that's like-
England doesn't do that. And here's the thing. When we discuss Europe,
God knows
England
about
is always
France.
going to be a little bit of a different
You think God
country.
knows about France?
What?
So,
England's going to always be a little bit different.
I just feel like this is very inefficient. It could be a lot quicker.
We could be much more efficient and get. Well, the most efficient way is you just lock them in the tower and leave them there, and they'll die.
so the death warrants, isn't that like religiously like not okay?
No, it isn't okay. You're exactly right. It's a death warrant. The king can sign a
So
death
the
warrant.
church, like,
Yeah, and those kings will have that up until the French Revolution.
Was the church
Because
like
that's
they
one of the
don't-
things that the French Revolution will say, hey, you shouldn't just be able to sign a death warrant for somebody. And he does it a lot. It's not like I use that when I think it's absolutely positively necessary.
Was
I
Napoleon, like, chill with that?
no,
Okay.
but it takes like 300 years to get to the French
Why?
Revolution. Yes.
They have like assassins back then
You're
that
upset.
you could like go somewhere
You're
and like.
so dumb.
Do they have a what?
Did they have like actual assassins that like that
Yeah.
was their job?
Yeah,
So
Then
why
why
didn't
did
you just like
taking time to break people's bones? And
Yeah,
then
why-
because they're
what
nobility.
you're just-
No, because they're nobility.
So if they don't know you did it and they just die, who are they gonna tell? They're dead.
It's
I
nobility.
don't feel like it's
You
a
have to
big
treat
deal.
nobility different. Nobility is treated different. If you're a poor person, then you don't even get to the Star Chamber. You just get your death warrant. And
You did.
But if you're dead, you can't say anything. They just die.
but
Yeah,
you have to
who's
have a
gonna
written.
know?
But you have to have the written confession. You have to have the written confession.
But if it's
The church requires you to have. Okay, we're way past my grade of understanding star chambers. We'll have to find some expert of understanding star chambers. But that is important. These star chambers are important. I will look into those in more depth and see if I can find out more about star chambers. But let's move forward. Nobles not allowed to have private armies. And here's what makes England different is that they have a parliament. So England's parliament, while it is not democratic, and the House of Lords controls almost everything, except under the House of Commons, there is some small little doses of democracy, teeny tiny. So when we talk about what?
Oh no, that was about another.
When we talk about every part else of Europe, England is always going to be different. And we'll have questions that will ask us that. Why did this develop differently in England? And we'll talk about how you need to be able to answer that. Standard government procedures, law and order, taxation were developed. Again, Tudors are never going to have the power and taxation that France will have. Then we got Spain. Right now, of these three countries, Spain is top dog. Spain is the most powerful country in Europe. By the time we get to the end of the notes, it's going to flip back to France. And the reason Spain is the most powerful is this marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella. Spain was divided into two. It unifies under these two king and queens, and Isabella is a queen in her own right, not because of her marriage. And they bring Spain and unite Spain as one nation. Of the two of these, Ferdinand and Isabella, Spain is driven by Isabella. Ferdinand is along for the ride. Isabella is a warrior queen. She is powerful, and she is devoutly religious. So the first thing she's going to do is kick out everyone in her country that is not Catholic. And if you look, 1492, and we do need to know 1492, but not Columbus, it is the Reconquista, or the reconquering of Spain for Catholicism. Remove the Moors. So let's look at that word Moors again, because we have lots of words that mean the same thing. A Moor is an African and almost always Islamic or a Muslim. So we'll call them Moors, we'll call them Muslims, we'll call them Africans, but Moors are Muslim Africans. So that's first thing, kicked out. Then we're going to kick out all the Jews. Get out. Leave. And again, it is the goal to remove Moors and Jews. Jews are forced out economically and other ways. Moors were forced out through warfare, militarily. Here's the problem, and this is where Spain after 1492 is going to go shoot, because the Jews and the Moors were their only middle class. They were the businessmen. And when they were kicked out, again, we start to see a decline of Spain. Now, in that, you see our first word, the Spanish Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition comes about as a result of this expelling of Jews. Because Jews, rightfully so, I believe if Maggie was a Jew, or Maddie, I'm sorry, if Maddie was a Jew in Spain, this is what she would do. Forget that. I'll just pretend I'm a Catholic. Okay? And stay here. Forget it. I'll pretend. And that's what a lot of Jews will do. They will say, this is my home. I'm not going to leave. This is where my business is. I'll just pretend. I'll just pretend that I'm a Catholic. I'll go to their church. I'll pretend. And so for the most part, they get away with that. However, there will begin tests for these Jews. Are you really converted? And most often it's a public feast of which pork will be served.
That's what they're doing in the concentration camps in China.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh my God, they have all of the Yisir Muslims in China.
Oh, and they're trying to make them eat pork. Yes. Okay. Well, that's what the Spanish are going to do as a, are you really converted? Will you eat the pork? And for the most part, they do not. And they get, again, pulled into this Spanish Inquisition. But let's look, again, Jews are converted, but we're now suspected of backsliding. And the important part of this Spanish Inquisition is 4C, that first dot, anti-Semitism. This wave of anti-Semitism. And if you don't know what anti-Semitism is, it's hatred of Jews. This is where it begins. Jews will then be required to wear hats called, and this will sound, when I say this, it sounds so derogatory, but it is a Jew hat. So they had to wear special types of hats. They had to wear, again, special types of markings, armbands, stars. So when we think about Nazi Germany in the 1920s and 30s, that was not something that Hitler dreamed up. It had been going on in Europe for hundreds and hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. In Portugal, 4,000 Jews massacred. And again, Germany will start systematically persecuting Jews in 1509. So the persecution of Jews has a long, long history in Europe and is not something that begins in the 1920s. Yes?
So, I'm going to try to phrase this right. Why is it that out of all religions, the Jews were the most hated? Like, because they...
Two reasons. And I can tell you, I will maybe try to explain it religiously to you, right? That the Jews don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So that's a small part that many people choose. But the biggest reason is an economic reason. That Christians, the Christian faith did not allow for moneylenders, right? Do you remember the story where Jesus throws the moneylenders out of the temple? So if you're a Christian, you cannot be a banker because it is sinful to make money on money. It's called usury. You can't lend someone money and say, hold on, let me get all the way through it. You can't. You don't have to be sorry. I just don't want you to have your hand all the way up. So if I lend you $50 and say, you have to pay me back, what time do we get out of here? You have to pay me back 2% interest. That's sinful. And so no Christians lend money. So who lends the money? Jews. So if I am a noble in Spain and I have borrowed money from a Jewish moneylender and I come up with this, hey, let's persecute Jews and run them out of town, what happens to my debt? My debt's gone. In a basic, small, sentence, most of the reason why Jews are persecuted is economic, is that they were the money lenders of Europe. Jews were the money lenders across Europe. The Rothschilds, all of them, they were the money lenders of Europe. And so if you could eliminate your money lender, then you eliminated your debt. So how are you going to eliminate your moneylender? Oh, I don't know. Let's just eliminate a whole group of people. Maddie.
Can Christian people use banks?
Yeah,
Well then,
they borrow money all the time. But the reason is it's sinful. So let's let these people who are sinful do it. It's not sinful to borrow money. It's sinful to make money on borrowing money. So make sure you understand. It's not sinful for me to borrow it. It's sinful to make money off of money. But I need to borrow it. So let's let these people who are sinful anyway and not Christian be in charge of the moneylenders, which now if we move to modern day 20th and 21st century, all those conspiracy theorists that Jews run the world because they run the banks, I always laugh and say, ha ha, it's not true. That is not true whatsoever. But I do kind of laugh at those conspiracy theorists because, ha ha, you set it up. You did it. If you believe that, it's because you did it. In the 1400s, actually really all the way back to the 900s.
So that's like still a thing.
Usury?
Like a Christian can't work at a bank.
No.
My grandpa.
No. It's called usury, but no. It was a really important part for a long time. And it creates very wealthy Jewish people. Very wealthy. Which is one of the reasons that most people believe that they were targeted. Not so much because of their religious beliefs. Yes.
Is there another quiz? I heard that at the beginning, but what's the?
Is it what?
Is there another quiz?
Tomorrow, yes.
What is it?
We'll do it at the end of the hour.